Hello and welcome to another episode of the Motherhood Podcast. We're so excited that you're joining us today, whether you're a new listener or you've been listening to us for a while now. We really appreciate it. And if you have a few extra moments today, we'd really appreciate it too if you would just hit the subscribe button and or rate us in whatever podcast app that you listen to. That just helps us with rankings and gets more visibility as well. So thank you so much for doing that. And I'm really excited for our guest today, Dr. Danielle, who is a pediatric physical therapist. I've been looking at her Instagram page and just all the materials that she's puts online and on her website. And I'm just blown away by all the different things that you can do with children and babies. And I had no idea. So I'm really excited for you to listen to everything, in terms of, purposeful play. I had no idea what that was. And also different tummy time and different things you can do with tummy time, and even different ways that you can help train your kid and use their fine motor skills to help them develop for potty training, just those sorts of things, just to give you a little preview. But as usual, that everything that is this episode, as with all of our medical episodes, are not actual medical advice. There's no doctor-patient relationship formed, and it's purely for educational and informational purposes. So with that, I'd like to welcome Danielle to the show. She is a mom to a sweet, busy 2-year-old boy with a baby on the way. And as I mentioned, she's a pediatric physical therapist with more than 4 years of experience, but I'd love for her to tell everyone about herself. So Danielle, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you for having me. My name's Danielle, and I am a pediatric physical therapist. I created Purposeful Play PT, which is mostly just an Instagram page that I wanted to create to help other parents learn how to play with their children in order to help promote their development. When I became a mom, I was just very surprised by the lack of knowledge that was around and the lack of awareness with a lot of the other moms and parents that I was speaking to regarding the importance of really addressing those developmental milestones and how easy it is to really incorporate that into play. And so when I became a mom, I kind of had this idea, and that's when I launched my Instagram page. And now I'm also on Facebook, and I have my own website, and I'm planning to do more with it, like creating courses for people in the future in order to help them. And I work part-time as a physical therapist, and I've been working for about over 4 years with the pediatric population. I think that's about it.
How did you get interested in pediatric physical therapy? Because I never really thought of that in terms of just normal childhood development. I guess in my mind, physical therapists were more of if you have an injury or you're recovering from surgery, those sorts of things. What made you get interested in the pediatric side?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the area that people don't realize that is actually, a lot of times people think of physical therapy and they think of, treating adults with injuries. But I actually was involved in a program where we would go to Mexico in my undergrad. I went to a school in Southern California, and we would go to Mexico and do physical therapy on kids with special needs who couldn't afford it. That's actually where I also met my husband, which is kind of a cool story. But
nice.
That's really where I felt like I really saw the impact and the just how rewarding it can be. A lot of the children had severe special needs that we were working on, and really just the simplest things like placing your hand on them or just, giving them a gentle stretch just made such a difference in their lives. And so I feel like that's really where I kind of found that passion. And I felt like it was just a lot more rewarding. And I felt like just seeing the joy that they had on their face just always brought me joy too. So that's kind of where it all started. And then in school, I really sought out to get as many internships in pediatrics as I could to try and get as much experience as I could.
That's a wonderful experience. And is that where you met Dr. Betsy? Do you know her, right?
We were actually we were in the same PT school class. So over at Azusa Pacific University.
Okay.
Yeah. So where I also did
Oh,
my
nice.
grad
Okay,
school.
because I know that we've had her
Mhm.
on the show.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and she's
Okay,
a
got it.
pelvic floor physical
Yeah,
therapist.
that's
So it's really cool just to see, yeah, our colleagues and fellow classmates, what they're doing out there on the online. Yeah.
yes,
Uh-huh.
definitely. Yeah, yeah, we've had her on the show a few times, and she's been super helpful with just talking about different aspects of pelvic floor physical therapy, and that's how I kind of was introduced to you too. So that's neat that you both know each other and went to school together.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'd love to dive into your passion, and that's talking about the purposeful play. I know that you have an Instagram account to promote that. It's at purposeful underscore play underscore PT. So if anyone listening wants to follow her along, I'll also link it to the show notes and link it on her Instagram as well. And her Facebook is Purposeful Play PT. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, that I honestly had never even heard of this concept before I came across your page, but I'm really hooked at the idea of it. And I'm just so excited to talk to you to learn more about it. So tell us, what is purposeful
Yeah,
play?
I'm happy to. I mean, it really just is playing with a purpose in mind. So it sounds pretty simple, but basically it's having a mindset of setting up the environment that your child's playing in with a purpose in mind to help them um, develop and grow stronger. I think oftentimes it's really just creating those opportunities for movement within your everyday play or your everyday activities. So, one of the examples that I like to use is rolling them over during a diaper change or practicing tummy time during a diaper change. Just like different simple tips that you can do throughout the day to really help promote their development without even really having to try.
That's really cool. So when I'm listening to that, it all sounds great. And I wish that I knew different ideas to do with
Mm-hmm.
kids. But at the same time, sometimes, at least for me, it kind of feels a little bit overwhelming. Just the thought of, oh, like, how can I incorporate something that will help them practice their gross motor skills or fine motor skills, those sorts of things. So I thought it would be great if we could just go over different purposeful play ideas. I know you talk about them on your Instagram page and on your different social media pages. So I thought, just in terms of practicality, to give everyone an idea, and also, to help myself, let's just go over some of the different age groups. I know that you break it down on your websites for 0 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months, 9 to 12 months, 12 to 18 months, and then 18 to 24 months. And I'm not sure if you have toddler as well, but I thought it would be really informative if we could just get the basics of what we should be doing during those
Yeah, of
ages.
course. I'm happy to share. I do have on my Instagram page. It's in a little bit more detail, but I'll just go through those different age ranges and kind of what you want to expect during those times and kind of the best ways to play with your children at that age. So starting off, a lot of times when a baby is a newborn or 0 to 3 months, they're not really going to be interested in much else but you. So they want to see your face. They want to see, they can't really see super far in front of them either. They really can only see like less than 12 inches. So toys aren't really, they're not really going to be as interested in toys, but they're going to be interested in you. So one of my favorite ways to really incorporate development and promote strength and development during this time is doing tummy time, but doing it like on your chest. So I think a lot of people
Mm,
don't realize that tummy time isn't just placing your baby on the floor, and also that you
right.
want to start it right away, and that you can start it right away. It's not going to do any harm to your child. And so a lot of times my recommendation to start initially is to just start having them lay on your chest at an incline while you're laying on the couch. Have them look at your face, talk to them, engage with them. That's a great way to start in that age range.
I love that. I had no idea either, because when I was looking at your page and then I came across tummy time in different ways to do tummy time, my mind was just blown because, as I mentioned before we started recording, I have a almost 5-month-old. And yeah, I mean, with my daughter and my son, we've just been putting him on his tummy and just hoping, I mean, sometimes I put him in front of the mirror so it gives him a little bit more attention so he can look at himself or something. And that seems to motivate him a little bit. But when I just put him on his tummy on the floor, he gets upset pretty easily, which I'm sure that's what most babies do. So that's such a good idea to have them be on your chest. Is there any other ways that you could do tummy time to just kind of engage them a little more?
At that age, also, you can hold them in tummy time. So, I mean, holding your baby isn't always a bad thing. I know that that's a big misconception out there too. But there's ways that you can hold your child on their tummy by just putting your arm in between their legs and having it rest on their stomach and holding one hand here. And almost a lot of times people will call it like Superman or airplane. And you do that.
Okay. Or like the football.
And do that rocking motion.
Okay.
Because really what you want to see at this age, I mean, really you're building that foundational strength to develop into the other milestones that they're going to need to develop into. So rolling, crawling. So by starting early with tummy time, it's really important because you're really developing those muscles that they need to push up on their own and really strengthen their back and their neck, and also their core. And so it's really anything where their head is not resting on anything and they're on their stomach. So you could even hold them in tummy time. Okay. So holding them and just like against your chest with tummy chest to chest is a great way. Or like I said, that airplane hold, or even having them on their side, like holding them on their side facing out is another good way to work on. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah,
I have a lot of visuals of these on my Instagram page. Sometimes it's kind of hard to just talk through things, but yeah, so.
Yeah, exactly. I know that it's kind of hard to talk about some of the different things without a visual, but I know that on your Instagram account that you have a lot of helpful visuals. So definitely, if anyone's listening wants to get ideas of what that looks like, go check that out. And then also, you're really generous. I know that you have a handout that you offered our listeners, and we'll link that in the show notes. And I know that you have some tips in there as well. So how about the next age range that you have? So 3 to 6 months, what should you be doing with your baby at that time?
Yeah, so around 3 to 6 months, you're going to want to start seeing them begin to roll. So that's really the thing that you want to look towards and you want to work towards during that time. So rolling from tummy to back or back to tummy. And what you can really do is you can start by, one of my favorite ways to play at this age is having them on their side. So if they don't stay on their side, one of the easiest things you can do is put a pillow or your leg or something and have something. A lot of times at this age, they're going to be more interested in like mirrors, like you were saying earlier, looking at themselves. Yeah. And then also their vision is going to want to see more black, white, and red. So if you can find anything with those colors, that's going to really attract them. So they make like a lot of like black, white, and red books and stuff like that. That's just because that's the first colors that your baby learns to see. And they're more high contrast. That's going to engage them more. So that's another kind of way to engage them in that position. You can hold them in that position or have them rest against you on that, laying on their side, because that's going to be the in-between motion that they're going to need in order to roll over. So what you can also do is you can practice from that position. You can also practice rolling them onto their tummy or rolling them onto their back. And then this is also where I like to work on like during like, because you're changing their diaper like every couple hours, right? Like, so working on that during diaper changes. So rolling them onto their tummy and then picking them up, or even when you pick them up from the crib because they're going to be laying on their back, rolling them onto their stomach and then picking them up, different things like that. Just really teaching them. You're not going to do any harm by teaching them the motions. Like they're going to learn it on their own eventually, but like showing them by doing it yourself is going to be a great way to start.
Exactly. Okay. That makes sense. So 0 to 3 months, it sounds like you want to focus a lot on the tummy time. And then 3 to 6 months, then you're going to want to focus more on the side and then the rolling
Yeah,
back and
and
forth.
then in tummy time at 3 to 6 months, sorry, you're gonna want to start seeing them pushing up more, like with straight hands or straight elbows
Mhm.
and flat hands. So some ways to
Okay.
work on that is doing tummy time over like a boppy pillow where they're able to really like push up through their hands, or even
Mm.
over yeah, or even over your legs, like different things like that to try and really develop that arm strength. Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a
Mhm.
lot of sense. And then what about the next age range? So 6 to 9 months. What should we be doing in that age
Yeah,
range?
so this is when our babies really are going to start wanting to move. So, yeah, 0 to 6 months, a lot of times there's not a ton happening, but you want to see them rolling by now, ideally in a typically developing child. But there's very large range. I always like to say, just to make sure to that people know that there's a very large range of normal as far as development goes. But this is just
Okay.
very general and explaining what I would hope to see in a typical child, from a physical therapist perspective. But anyways, from 6 to 9 months, you want to start seeing them begin to crawl, or really just start inching their way forward on their tummy, or also and then also a lot of times you'll start seeing them begin to sit up on their own at this age. So some this is there's a lot of things that you can really work on at this age, but a lot of times what I like to do is really work on getting them on their hands and knees. What you can do is doing different things like playing just on your hands and knees over a pillow, or over mom's legs, or
Mm.
and then also, if you start noticing that they're trying to inch forward, like a lot of times what I've noticed is that babies will get really frustrated on their tummy because they really want to crawl, but they can't. So
Right.
they're like,
That's what my
I really
son's
want to go
doing now.
forward, but I can't
Yeah.
because they don't have the proper strength yet, and they don't properly know how to push off of the
Right.
floor with their feet in order to go forward. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, one of the things that I like to do is either put their feet against it, like a couch, or like a wall or something, and have them, when they do start wiggling and stuff, they're going to naturally push their feet against the wall, and it's going to push them forward.
Oh, yeah.
One thing you can also do is put your
Okay.
hands against their feet and have them
Yeah.
bend their knees and push forward. And that'll teach them kind of like the input that they need in their feet in order to go forward. And then eventually
Mm.
they're going to learn how to do it from the the ground. It might take some time, but that's a good way to teach them that. And then also, a lot of times, crawling is going to progress. Most times, the baby starts by pivoting, so pivoting on their tummy. So meaning like going in a circle on their tummy, and then they might start pushing
Okay.
themselves backwards, and then they'll go forwards. Oftentimes, it doesn't always happen
Got
in
it.
that particular order, but that's oftentimes what you see. And so,
Okay.
so a good way to work on this is just putting toys like in a like a rainbow arch around them when they're on their tummy, so that
Okay.
they're inclined to move towards that direction. Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. Is there a toy that's like that, or how could I, like, for example, how could I easily access a rainbow arch like that? Like, how, or do you make
Well,
it?
it really be like finding their favorite toys and placing them like placing like 5 different toys in like an arch. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. I guess I'm wondering, where do you get the arch
well,
from,
no,
or how do you
it
make
wouldn't be
it?
like you wouldn't have to have like an arch necessarily. You could just put the toys
Oh, okay.
in that position. Yeah,
Oh,
does that
I
make
see.
sense?
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah. So you just
you
hang
could
them.
do it.
Yeah.
Well, no, because 'cause they'd be on their stomach, so you want it to be on the floor. Does that make
Oh,
sense?
I see. Okay. I guess I was thinking a different
Yeah,
visual. So
yeah.
I got it. So you put them in on
Uh-huh.
the floor so then it motivates them to go get those
Exactly.
objects.
Yes. Yeah, but
Okay. That
in a
makes sense.
way where it's gonna be in like an arch so that they want to pivot towards it. Yeah.
Right.
That's
Okay.
kind of where the
Yeah, it's amazing when they're
purposeful
motivated.
play comes into play. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, it makes sense that if they're motivated and they see something, then they're gonna wanna it motivates them to go get
Yes. Yeah, it's a
it.
lot of
Right.
motivational play. Yeah. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Um
And then how about this sitting up during that time? What are your thoughts on like the bumbo chair? Is that good or should you like help them sit up or is that just something that they're just going to learn automatically?
um so as far as sitting up goes, that's one thing that babies a lot of times have an easier time learning to sit up on their own in one position than learning how to get into that position. So,
Okay. Hmm.
I'll just start one thing that I recommend is not just placing your baby in that sitting position, because
Mm.
they're going to learn that. They're not the thing that's hard for a lot of babies to learn is going from their back or from their tummy into that sitting position. And if they're going to get
Okay.
frustrated if they want to sit but they don't know how to get there. Because babies love sitting up and playing because they can see everything. Like you're not looking at the ceiling, your face isn't in the floor, but if you're just forcing them
Yeah.
into that position, they're not going to learn how to get there. So, I like to
Right.
encourage people to really try working on that transition, or instead of just placing your baby in sitting, laying them on the floor and then sitting them up. Like and so don't place your baby directly in
Okay.
sitting. Place them on their back or on their stomach when they're on the floor and then have them get up on their own.
Mm.
Um as far as
Okay.
learning how to sit on their own, a boppy pillow is a great uh I I think the boppy pillow is great because they still have the freedom to move around and they still have that support, um where they can it's not as restrictive. As far as the bumbo seat goes, it's not my favorite because a lot of any of the baby seats are not going to teach a baby how to sit because they're putting the
Right.
baby in a position where they're like fixed in that position, so they're not learning, their muscles aren't
Mhm.
properly developing in order to be able to sit up on their own. And also a lot of times what the way
Right.
that the seat's made is putting their pelvis in like what's called a posteriorly tilted or like slouched position that isn't helping to properly develop the muscles to be able to sit up. And then also a lot of times they're not they're not made for they're not allowing for proper hip development either. So there's a bumbo multi-seat, I think, and then there's also one called the up seat that is better, but I still don't recommend a baby seat because there's so many other ways you can support your baby in sitting, like I said, with the boppy pillow or even um yeah, with like pillows around them or sitting against a couch or something like that. Mhm.
Okay. Okay. And then I know that I wanted to ask you more about the transitions because I know that you talk about that on your page about how transitioning is actually really important. So that sounds like what you're talking about right now is kind of referencing that transition. So maybe we can just jump ahead briefly just to so you can kind of explain what that is, the
Yeah, so
transitions.
transitions just means like a lot of times there's static positions, so such as just sitting in one place or standing in one place. And
Mhm.
transitions is basically just how you get to that position. So kind of what I was talking about just now is trying to avoid placing your baby directly into sitting and instead laying them on their back or on their stomach and having them learn to get into sitting before they sit up. Or same thing, you can do that during diaper changes or when you pick them up from the crib. You can sit them up instead of just directly picking them up so that they learn that the proper motion for that. And then as far as just placing them in standing, it goes the same way. You really want to try and encourage them to pull themselves into stand. So instead of just placing them into standing, you want to either lay them on the floor or lay them on the floor so that they can sit up and then eventually crawl over to whatever position they want to pull to stand. So really just trying to be purposeful about the way that you place your baby on the floor in order to help them learn those different skills on how to get into those different positions. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And then is that important because then they're using those muscles to help them transition? Is that from like a physical therapy standpoint? Is that why it's important working on the transitions?
Well, first they could get stuck in that position and not know how to get out. Or also,
Okay.
yes, from a physical therapist perspective, those core muscles that they need to sit up on their own or to go into standing are very essential for crawling and walking and other different skills that they're going to need to have later on. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then when you're talking about have them sit up on their own, I know that we're going to post this video on our YouTube, but for anyone who's listening just on the podcast, the audio, are you pulling on their arms gently to have them kind of like do a sit up? Is that how you get them to do it themselves?
It's a little tricky to explain, but what you want to do is you want to roll them onto their side and then sit them up. So that's the best way that you want to teach them how to sit up so that they can push up on their arm into sitting. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're basically guiding them through those transition phases.
Right. Uh-huh.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and then eventually you want to encourage them to do it on their own. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense. Great. So going back to the different age ranges, I think we're on the 6 to 9 months now. So how about in the 9 to 12 month range? What are some things that we can be practicing with our kids?
So once they're learning to crawl, some different things that you can do so usually like between 9 and 10 months, we want to see babies starting to crawl on their hands and knees. And so some things you can do to help with that is have them crawl over your legs or set up like a pillow obstacle course around your living room where they can basically like crawl over all the pillows in order to encourage that. A lot of times, one of the main questions I get is how do you go from army crawling to hands and knees crawling? And around this age is when you're going to start seeing that. And then it's very like 9 to 12 months, you see a lot of skills emerging because oftentimes this is also when you're going to start seeing them pulling to stand on furniture or, and then once they're on their feet, they're wanting to, go into cruising or rotating to pick up a toy or sit or figuring out how to go from that position of standing with support to being on the floor. So there's a lot of different things, but I think the main skills to work on that you can work on in this is doing that. The setting up like an obstacle course for crawling is a great purposeful play method that you could do at this age. And then also working on playing in different positions. So I mentioned the hands and knees, but you can also work on playing on your knees. So at a surface on your knees, you can use like a diaper box or a laundry basket, a lower surface. A lot of times it's going to be easier for a baby to pull themselves to stand on a lower surface before a higher surface. So I have a post on this, but different things you can do is you can take out the couch cushions and have them practice pulling to stand or playing and kneeling without the couch cushions until they're like ready to go to a higher surface, like with the couch cushions. So that's kind of a simple way that you can work on that if that's where your baby's at in their development.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Wow, I'm learning so much. I'm so excited too, because especially since I have a baby too, so I'm just making notes and I'm just gonna make sure I do all of these things as my youngest James is growing in these different ages.
It's a lot of information all at once. I guess that's good. It's recorded because people can replay it. Yeah.
Exactly. And then your handout is super helpful too. So anyone listening again, we'll have the handout it linked in the show notes. And then also, obviously, anyone can visit your social media pages or your website
Mm-hmm.
too. So how about the next age range? It's 12 to 18 months that you divide up on your different sites. So what should we be working on during that? Or I guess not working on, because the whole thing about is your whole site and your whole idea is purposeful play. So how should we be playing with our children during
Right.
that
Yeah. What
age?
are some play ideas or yeah. Um so around just like around 12 to 16 months is when typically babies start taking steps. I think a lot of people think that the range is a lot lower, and you can see babies start taking steps earlier than that, and a lot of times I will
Right.
recommend a PT intervention if they aren't walking by 16 or 17 months. So that's kind of
Okay.
like
Yeah, I was
the
gonna ask you
yeah.
what age do you think that they should be for sure? Because I know a lot of parents listening are probably also checking it off saying, "Oh, is my
Mhm.
kid's doing that
Mhm.
on time and everything?" So that's a big
Right,
worry,
right.
so
So
that's
that's
really good
it's
to
a
know.
big range, really. A lot of people are worried if their baby's not walking by their first birthday, but that's really on the lower end of normal. So, and
Right,
oftentimes
okay.
during that time, the baby, a baby, it takes a while for them to develop, but then they just get it one day. So, so yeah, so
Right. Yeah, it seems like they just do it overnight. Suddenly, they're just not walking, and then the next day at least it seems
uh-huh,
like that from my friends
uh-huh.
with kids, they're not walking at all. The next time I see them, like, a week later, they're walking
Yeah, and then
suddenly.
also a lot of times this will be good for listeners to know, but your first steps do count as walking. So like a lot of times this is the same with crawling, the same with rolling. Sometimes you see them roll
Mhm.
and then you don't see it for like a week later because it's like and then they
Mm,
start just really getting it. Like so a lot of times like what
yeah,
happens is they'll take their first steps and so they can do it, but they might not do it all the time. So I mean it can take
right.
months for them to be fully independent walking on like down the street or something like that. Like they're going to start by taking a
Yeah.
few steps at a time until they build up that confidence and that strength to be able to just take off. So, yeah, yeah. So I think that's good. I think that's helpful to know as a mom because there is a lot of pressure in motherhood in making sure your kid develops on time.
Yep.
And I just also
Yep.
like, I'm a mom too, and I understand that you never, that as a mom, it's just like, it's not worth putting that pressure on yourself, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. And I
Right.
never want people to
Yeah.
feel guilty or judged because if anything my goal is really just to help other parents. So yeah. As
Right.
a side note.
Yeah, that's funny you say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that because with my daughter, I was kind of like that. I always wanted her to be like right at the exact age or a little early or right at the cusp of every single new skill that she was supposed to be learning or whatnot. But then with James, I kind of had that same mentality because it's like, well, I mean, I know that some kids really do need to go to physical therapists and get help, as you were saying, and I'm sure that you see those cases. But at the same time, like, I mean, they all learn to walk
Mhm.
eventually, unless they have some, I think maybe that's the worry then with most moms that they're wondering, oh, is there something wrong with my child? But I mean, in general, like most kids are going to be walking
Right,
eventually, right?
exactly. Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, as far as walking goes, the the biggest like building blocks to walking that I feel like are important to address is so you want to see them start to pull the stand and then you want to see them cruise, which is cruising along furniture, which is when they take like side steps along furniture. We call that cruising in the PT
Mm.
world. um, and then eventually they might start like going from like a table to a couch or something like a little bit farther apart. And then as far as standing goes, you oftentimes don't see them standing on their own until after they start taking steps. This doesn't always happen, but
Mm.
it kind of goes hand in hand. So at this age, at 12 to 18 months, you're really going to start seeing steps and standing, and they're going to want to be on their feet a lot more. So some things that you can do some play ideas as far as this goes is you can have them stand with their back like against a wall or something with support, or even standing towards a wall and putting like suction type toys. Like I really like squigs, or like there's some other different suction toys out there, so that they're playing with support, but it's at like a vertical surface. So that's a good way to work on that standing balance. And then you can do the opposite where their back is against the wall and they're playing, and then they might even start taking steps towards you from that position. A lot of times.
Okay. And they're called squigs, you said? I've never heard of those before.
They're great. You can use them for a lot in physical therapy. But they, it's by Fat Brain Toys is the company. So they suction to the wall or really to any like sticky surface, and so they're fun to play with at any age.
The name sounds fun.
But and then a lot of times I also recommend so as far as starting to take steps, since that's kind of where we're at in this age range, some different ideas. You can have them start taking steps towards like a couch or like a soft surface because they're not going to know how to slow down as much in the beginning. So what I would do is I would just like hold my son away from the couch like a little bit and then just let him go and see. And he just like would basically like tumble towards the couch, but he was stepping. But it wasn't quite controlled yet. So that's a good way. And then before they're like ready to go on their own as far as that goes. So I would say holding them and having them go towards a couch or something like that. And then also having their back against the surface and going towards you. And then you can start kind of having them walk in between like another person, you and another person, or you and your spouse or whoever, just doing very, very little distance at first, and then gradually increasing the distance as that goes. And then one thing also to touch on that I feel like is very important is not to make sure to not, like, a lot of times people think that holding their kids' hands above like their shoulders is like,
I've seen that. I've been guilty of that
and
myself.
It's really hard to not do it. But there's something called nursemaid's elbow that happens in children, and it's basically an elbow dislocation because and so a lot of times, like, one way, the main way that happens is like by swinging your kid like from their hands, but it can also happen if you're accidentally pulling up, because those joints aren't fully developed yet. So it's something that I think a lot of people don't know about. So what I recommend is if you're going to hold them by their hands, holding them either at shoulder level or below, or holding them at their shoulders or at their hips is really one of the best ways to really work on that. Because then they're also not dependent on your hands. Because a lot of times babies will be like, "Oh, I need mom to take, or I need a hand to take a step." Like, so they become more confident in not having to have that hand to hold. But so that's
interesting. Okay.
So that's a key point, I think, in walking, as far as just from a PT perspective, something that you do see in PT and that you do see happen sometimes is that nursemaid's elbow, because of not knowing that you're not supposed to pull up on the hands.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize that for the walking. I mean, I definitely did that with my daughter a lot, but I knew the swinging from the arms. I knew that wasn't good. So that's good to know that you shouldn't do that for the walking too. Okay. How about the next age range, 18 to 24 months? What are some things that we can be encouraging our kids to do at that age?
So at that age, that's kind of where I'm at right now, because I have a 2-year-old. So that's been kind of fun. I feel like that's kind of like fresh on my mind. But some things that are good to work on is starting to work on like balancing on one foot, or so you want them to be walking by now, walking up and down the
Right.
stairs. So with mostly up the stairs at this age, but while holding onto your hand or while holding onto a handrail. And one way you can work on that initially is just by having them step up and down like a curb or like a step or something like that, just so that it's not as intimidating as a full flight of stairs. That's a good thing to work on. You can work on stepping over different things, as far as like putting a towel in the middle of the floor and having them step over that. Um,
Okay.
Playing on the playground is great because they climb up and down stairs and go down slides and all that stuff. It almost like naturally encourages all those movements. Working on like kicking a
Mm-hmm.
ball is good. So like when like bringing a ball on your walk in the neighborhood and having your kid kick the ball as they go is always fun.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good way to work on balancing on that one foot.
Yeah, those are all great. And yeah, I just, as you were saying that we just got a little soccer ball for my daughter. She's
Okay.
3. And I wish I would have gotten it sooner too. 'Cause I mean, she
Uh-huh.
loves it. She always was kicking other random balls, but I didn't realize that they actually make like toddler size balls until I was like looking on Amazon. I saw, oh,
Mhm.
they have like little toddler size balls. And then that's been so much easier for her to
Mhm.
kick, which is a lot of fun to see her
Yeah,
do that.
yeah, that's very true. We did start with like a toddler-sized ball. When I started noticing my son was interested in balls, which at around, I mean, really around like 9 to 18 months, I feel like that's when uh, kids start getting really interested in balls and like what balls do and bouncing balls and throwing
Mhm.
balls and stuff like that. So, it's a
Yeah.
great age to
So many
introduce
things to
it.
do with
Yes.
balls.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So how about avoiding containers? I know that I had asked you before the episode what you were most passionate about, and I know that you mentioned avoiding containers. And at first, I didn't really know what you meant. So again, like I'm just so excited to talk to you and learn all these new different terminology or different things. But once I read through your handout that you had sent, I saw that your number 2 tip for purposeful play is avoiding containers. So what do you mean by that? What is a container? I know that I mentioned the bumbo earlier, and so obviously I've read it, so I can see what you said. But for everyone who's listening who's not really familiar with the idea of what are containers and how to avoid them, why should we avoid them, and then should we be doing instead of these devices?
Yeah, of course. I think containers is kind of like it's like another PT lingo phrase. Like every PT knows what we're talking about, but parents are probably like, "What?
Yeah,
Like, why would I put my baby
yeah,
in this
that was my first
container?"
reaction. Yeah.
But really, it's just a way of explaining like putting your baby in a fixed, like restricted position where they can't freely move, they can't freely use the muscles that they need to use in order to develop the proper strength, um, to develop that mobility that they need. So, um, some examples of containers would be, like I said, like the bumbo seat or any baby seat, really, a baby swing, a bouncer, um, a rocker, exerciser, different things like that, that often times I think it's just important to know that those things do not help promote development. There's a lot of research
Mhm.
uh, that shows that they actually can delay development if your baby is in there for a
Oh,
long period
wow.
of time. And I think a lot of times, like, what happens is I'm a mom. You get busy, you need to take a shower, you need to run into the other
Yeah,
room real quick, and you're like, I'm not going to put my baby on the floor. I don't know where they're going to end up, like, or like you
right.
you and so I think that the issue is the overuse of these items. It's not necessarily
Mhm.
using them, but if you don't use them, then you're optimizing, every opportunity for your baby. But so I guess my
Mhm.
biggest thing is just making sure that if you are going to use these things, not depending on them. So using them for 10 to 15 minutes max at a time. So let's say you need to take a shower, you need to go to the bathroom real quick, or like different things like that. Like, I'm a mom, I understand that these things do need to be used, but just being conscious about not keeping them in that position for a long period of time. And
Okay.
and just knowing, yeah. And then also, if you are to use them, to make sure that you are giving your baby free play, which is putting them on the floor is a great way to give them an open environment to learn unrestricted play where they can learn how to use those muscles properly, and learn how to move in the natural environment that they're really seeking. So making sure to do that floor time like 3 or 4 times the amount of time that they are in the container. Yeah.
Okay.
And then really, I mean, yeah, they don't do they don't help with development, and they also can lead to positional abnormalities of the head, such as like plagiocephaly, which is basically just like flat spots on your head, or torticollis, which is that head tilt that oftentimes they're referred to physical therapy because of that, when you could prevent it by keeping them out of those positions.
And what's that head
It's called
tilt?
torticollis.
Exactly is that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what is the symptom
So
of that?
what it is it's actually just a tight muscle. So the muscle that's responsible for tilting your head one way and rotating it the opposite direction gets tight in babies.
Oh, I see. They're
And
just
this
stuck in
can
that.
there's different ways that this is caused. A lot of times what it is caused at birth. But it doesn't it can also be caused by positions that the baby's in. And so if they're resting in that position in a swing for hours at a time, it's gonna tighten that muscle. And the only thing that can treat that is physical therapy intervention. And if they're not treated, like a lot of times, if they're not treated before 6 or 7 months, it can actually be harder to prevent in the future. Yeah. So
okay. That's really good to know.
Yeah. So a lot of PT referrals are because of extended use in containers, unfortunately, with that positional.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
Or it just makes it worse too. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you said 10 to 15 minutes at a time. Is there a limit, like during the day, let's say? So 10 to 15 minutes at a time, should you maybe do it no more than like a handful of times? Because I'm just thinking in my head, that's like, 5 times, like at least 50 minutes.
Right.
So
I guess, I mean, like when the baby's awake, they shouldn't be in the container more than 10 to 15 minutes. So it depends on the baby's age, how often they're awake. But I think that the important thing is making sure to really take advantage of those times that they're awake, that they're playing on the floor. And so as far as alternatives to containers go, a lot of times I'll have moms or parents say to me like, but I can't put my baby on the floor because there's a dog or there's a crazy toddler. Like, what else am I supposed to do? And you can,
right.
a lot of times I recommend a pack and play because they're still able to freely move around in a flat surface. And you just put a bunch of toys in there, or you hang something from the top, or put a mirror in there, or something to entertain them. That is a great way to also create that free, unrestricted play. Or a play yard. We use like a baby gate for the longest period of time to just block off our living room. And it really was just this big playroom where there's couches that encircle it and there's just a gate. And so my son couldn't go anywhere, but he had this like very large open area that he could play safely in. Or those different play yards that you can get that are like in an octagon or circle shape. Those are also great.
Yeah, definitely. My sister has one of those. Those are great.
Yeah. So.
Okay. So out of the containers onto the floor, try to simulate them on the floor. I do get it though. I mean, as you were saying, it's can get tiring if you're just trying to constantly entertain your baby, but maybe if they just have like different things that they can play with on the floor, then that'll kind of keep their attention. Do you have any favorites, I guess, of I know you had mentioned that. What was that thing? The suction cups on the wall?
The squigs. Yeah.
The squigs, yeah. Are there any other, I guess, go-to toys that you have or things to entertain kids on the floor so that they are more entertained or stimulated?
It kind of just depends on the age. I do have like a toy guide on my Instagram page that I did for the holidays that has like some really great ideas for each age. But I think anything that like, I mean, really the simpler the better, but things with mirrors, things with black and white, those seem to really engage kids. Things that make noise, different things like that, can are always great. Like I love like the tummy time mirrors, or there's these new tummy time water mats that are out, and
Oh, I just got one
yeah,
of
and
those.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
I
get
just
one
heard
for
about
my
it.
son.
It was only like
Yeah,
$12 or something.
yeah, they're like, yeah, they're super cheap and yeah, affordable, and I think they could work for like a lot of stages of development, like just to
Mhm.
when they're trying to learn to push up on their arms or on their hands and knees. Yeah, I'll definitely be getting it. I have a baby on the way coming in July, and I'll definitely be that's like on my list. So, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Mhm.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of it. One of my cousins, I saw that she had a baby, uh, I think a week after I did, and she got that for him, and she's just since it's her first, she's doing, like, a ton of research, and I guess there's all these new things that came out since I had my daughter, which was just a little over 3 years
Yeah.
ago. So now I kinda feel behind the times, like, "It was only 3 years ago, I thought I knew everything," and then here's this cool water mat, and it just has, like for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's just kinda, like, filled with water or gel or something, and then it has, like little fish or
Mhm.
little objects for them. So I was just getting it so that my son James, he could just when he's doing tummy time, so it entertains
Yeah.
him more because I'm just trying to like build
Mhm.
up his muscles and everything.
Yeah, that's
But yeah,
great.
I'm really excited to
Uh-huh.
use it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how you like it. Yeah, and then
Yeah, I'll have to
uh-huh.
let you know.
Other things that I love, they make like these piggy banks with like coins that you can put in the piggy, or
Oh
like there's
yeah,
like a treasure
my
chest.
daughter loves that
Yeah,
toy.
yeah, that's a great toy for really any age. Well, yeah, not like when they're super little, but yeah, um, I always
Yeah, I think she really got into that. I think maybe a little well, whenever they can start like picking
yeah,
things up, I forgot what age that
yeah,
is. She was into that for a while,
mhm.
like at least a year and a half, I
Yeah.
want to say.
Yeah, maybe like 6 to 7 months or so, yeah. Mhm. So
Mhm, exactly. Well, I know we're running out of time, but I still wanna talk a little bit about a couple other topics I had mentioned. So, one is the vestibular system, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, so you have to tell me, and then also the gross motor skills for potty training because that just blew my mind, and I really wanna learn about that since it's so relevant in my life right now. So what about the how do you say that? The vestibular?
It's the vestibular system. So basically it's yeah,
Oh, okay.
mhm.
I got
You
it,
did get it right. Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it's one of the sensory systems that is in our body. So, there's the five senses, sight, yeah, anyways, the five senses. I'll just make it brief, but the vestibular system is the one responsible for your balance and your equilibrium. And so
Mm.
what it originates, or it's in your inner ear. There's organs in your inner ear that are responsible for this. So, but what happens oftentimes in children is they're either like oversensitive to the vestibular stimulation is what we would call it, or under. So a lot. So this would be like a child that's really afraid of like a swing or something. So a lot of
Mm.
times some ways to work on your vestibular system or to work on just stimulating that are anything that involves movement. But then there's also children that are very like over they really like the vestibular stimulation. So those are those kids that love like my son
Yeah.
who loves like jumping off of everything and running around. Anything that involves movement like is his
Spinning.
thing. Yeah. Yeah. So or spinning or
Right.
swinging or sliding down the slide. So it's great for both.
Okay.
It's great to incorporate into your play for really if you're sensitive to it or if you're not, because you're going to want to have them gradually adapt to that vestibular stimulation, no matter what. So some ways to work on this is really just one aspect of their sensory system, like I said, which I could go further into. And it's more like occupational therapists that are more specialized in this kind of stuff. But some ways like that we would help stimulate our son's vestibular system were just like by sliding him on a blanket like along the floor, and he just loved it. We even did that when he was like crawling, because I mean they're on their tummy,
Oh,
and they're, yeah, it's not really gonna do any harm as long as you're doing it slowly and supervised. And yeah, so doing stuff like that, or swinging on the playground, or sliding down a slide, or jumping off of things, all those things are going to help to stimulate. When they're really little, a lot of, how a lot of times babies love that rocking and bouncing, and some babies are more, they calm down more with the rocking and bouncing than others. So that's basically,
mhm.
in medical terms, that's really vestibular input that they need to help them, and their
Okay.
vestibular system they just might need a little bit more of that vestibular input. It's, I don't know if that makes sense or not.
That's fascinating.
Yeah,
That explains
yeah.
why James just loves being rocked all the
Mhm.
time, and yeah, he just loves being calmed by me rocking him, even though it's always when I'm so tired and I just wanna sit, but he wants me to rock him around, so I guess that
Mhm.
makes sense why he likes that then.
Yeah, and there's
Switching
no
gears a
right.
little to the
Yeah.
last question I wanted to get to.
Oh,
Oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh, no, that's fine. I was just gonna say there's no right or wrong way. Like, it's not bad if your kid doesn't like it or if they don't. It's just helpful as a mom to know what ways you can properly trigger those systems and like best benefit your child as far as that goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super helpful to know
Mhm.
too. So, for the last question I really wanted to ask you was about the gross motor skills for potty training, which I know I had mentioned that it never even crossed my mind, but it makes sense when once I saw that on your websites that kids would have to have the different skills, the different motor skills in order to,
Mhm.
use the potty and be potty trained.
Mhm.
And I just love how physical therapy can help every single aspect of our lives, including children. So what are some gross motor skills for potty training and how can we practice those with our
Yeah,
kids?
I think the 3 that I really think of are learning how to
Mm, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Mm, mm. Okay. Wow. That's amazing to just think about all of that, and I had no idea. So I'll have to definitely do that with James since I didn't do that with Kate. So, as I mentioned at the earlier in the episode, that we will have the free download that you generously provided our listeners in our show notes. And I know I've had some questions before, where are the show notes? So basically, whatever app you're listening in, just look at the description of the episode. And then at the bottom of that description, you'll see a link to that, and that's where you can also watch the video if you're listening and you want to see the visual version, and maybe see some of the things that we're talking about or gesturing or if you prefer to watch the video version. And our last question that I really wanted to ask you, Danielle, which is more personal in nature, but it goes in line with our motto that there's no way to be a perfect mom but many ways to be a good one, that I would love for you to give an example of a time when you realized that it wasn't okay to be a perfect mom and okay to be a good one instead. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. I love that example so much, and it is hard, just as you were saying, when there's something dirty, like dirty dishes or whatnot, it's hard to just say no to them and just live in the moment. But just as you said that. Mhm. Exactly. Mhm. Exactly. Mhm. Exactly. Yeah. Right, right, exactly. That's so true. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Danielle, for coming on our show. I really enjoyed our conversation, and as I mentioned, that I'm going to be replaying this episode myself and just referencing your Instagram page. And so, could you say one more time what your Instagram handle is and your Facebook handle, just for anyone listening, and then your website too, so people can find you? Great. Well, thank you so much. And as I mentioned, you can also get some handouts in our show notes. Thank you so much, Dr. Danielle. I really appreciate it. Yes, it was amazing. So thank you so much.